Welcome to Women Entrepreneurs Radio with your host, Deborah Bailey. When I started this podcast in 2008, I was on a mission to promote women business owners, creatives, and entrepreneurs. In each episode, my guests provide resources, valuable tips, and inspiration. Women Entrepreneurs Radio is about showing women how to harness their natural strength to achieve success on their own terms. Did you know that you can find the Women Entrepreneurs Radio podcast on many podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube also? If you listen on Apple Podcasts, please take a moment to share your feedback and a review. 5 stars is always great, because the more that you share your feedback, the easier it will be for the show to be found by more listeners. So I hope you'll take a moment to do that. And as well, you can stop by the blog, womenentrepreneursradio.com, and you can find extended bios of the show guests and articles and announcements of interest to women business owners. So please make sure you stop by the blog and also subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Oh, wait, before you go, you can also stop by dbaileycoach.com to find out more about my nonfiction books and about my online writing courses for fiction authors. And dbaileycoach.com/brightbooks is where you'll find my paranormal and fantasy romance novels. And now, let's get started with the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Women Entrepreneurs Radio with your host, Deborah Bailey. And I am really glad that you could join us today. And I want to introduce my guest, Shari Moss. Splits her time between a home near Toronto and a magical, unperfect place in a small northern town on the lake. An author, entrepreneur, executive film producer, and adventurous warrior, Shari is currently launching her first children's book, The Marshmallow Kids, a picture book to help children with the challenge of making friends when moving often. Her adult kids now leave her more time for her other favorite pursuits, writing, golfing, world travel, and cycling. And her greatest fulfillment comes from helping others in ways she once needed herself. So welcome to the show, Shari.
Thanks so much, Deb, and that's a lovely introduction, so thank you. It's nice to be here.
So if you could share with us, before we talk a little bit about your book, how did you get started in the work that you're doing now?
Well, the latest publication that you're familiar with, you've just become familiar with, I launched that one a couple months ago. It's called For the Right Kind of Love, a life journey, but it is in fact my own memoir. And it's the third book I'm bringing out into the world. The first 2 were really sort of guidebooks for young people. We'll just say mostly for millennials, getting out into the world. But this book happened because it became apparent that I had a lot of things to share that I've gone through in my life, struggles and championships. And the more I was working with young people, the more I realized that, communication is key. We need to share stories. We need to share experiences. It helps people really not feel alone, helps them feel that they can empower themselves. So I did. I dug deep and I wrote a very, captivating, to say the least, story of my journey to where I am today.
And this is actually, isn't your first book?
No, it's the third one. First 2 were, experiments into, knowledge I wanted to share. But this one's really opening up. It's very raw. It's very personal.
So there's a lot of, I believe, symbolism that you used. And, for one, as far as living in a house, what did that symbolize for you?
Well, at the beginning of the story, as a 9-year-old, I am quite isolated out in the desert in California, living in a single motel unit, little motel, strip motel, with quite a few siblings, and dreaming of what it must be like to have a house, and how great those lives were. The school kids I went to school with must have, so they had a house. And so without even realizing it for a long time, my focus and determination came from having what it was that I thought was important. And that was to have the lovely home. So the journey takes you through several decades and several movements to different homes, in and out of them. But but behind the story is the trials and tribulations of some pretty drastic relationships, with my husband. And I did have that life that I worked very, very hard for. I did that on my own. But how it all crumbled, for outside reasons, we'll say. We can get into that if you like. Until finally, I realized that, it was my own personal happiness, accomplishment, safety that were just so much more important, that the need for the house and it's things, we all have things in our homes that we love and adore and are proud of achieving. Don't get me wrong, I love my home, but it's so much less important to me now that I'm on a better path for my future, for my own future.
And as far as growing up that way and maybe influences with your parents, do you feel that also influenced your own relationships later?
Absolutely. I think part of the work I do today, I did have a very, very successful long career as a young adult, for quite a few years. Worked in a wireless telecom environment. My husband and I had our own business, and we grew into it and grew to love it and did very, very well. And that was fine, but being on my own later, I knew that there was something else that I should have been doing, and one was writing. I'd always wanted to write. But the other thing was really centered around helping others, especially young people, kids. What I had when I was growing up that far back was no compassion, no kindness, no caring shown by teachers, parents, etc. Not that at least I was aware of. And that's the point, right? I was not aware there was any. So I really felt that kids needed to be listened to, needed to be heard, needed to be understood as much as possible, needed to be helped. So I transformed my work into concentrating on that, helping kids. And so that's where the books came out. I took my passion for always wanting to write and to, help young people, and I put the two together. So those were the books. This story, its intent is to let people know that they're not alone, because everything I went through, and I'm only talking about, the things as a child, as an adult, it was, in my household was alcoholism and addictions that I had to get past, survive through and get past with my kids and I, to somewhere better. So there was all kinds of, judgment. There was inequality as a woman in a business, you can imagine, wireless telecom. So all of those things, really provided me with a sense of my own strength. And that's what I wanted to share to help young people, to let them realize that, they can find the strength. They're not alone. These things that I went through, they happen to a lot of people. They're not unique to any person or any situation. There's a lot of people out there, but we don't talk about them because we feel we don't want the world to see, right? Those shameful things that are going on. And I opened up quite truthfully about my life so I could, let people know it's okay to talk about. The response has been astounding.
So what kind of advice would you offer, to those people who are in a family right now where they have those substance abuse problems going on and they're trying to manage that?
There always will be and are people who do care. Don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to speak up to my own immediate family, my in-laws, and our friends, they didn't want to hear. That was not something that they wanted to deal with. But I had some family members, I had some other friends that, find them, just find them there. You can talk about it. There are places, whether it be your social circles, your church, your soccer coach, what have you. There are people who, will listen, and please find them, because it will make all the difference in the world. The other thing is, don't be afraid. Don't be ashamed. We all have gone through these things. You'd be surprised the support people will help you.
That's a great point, because so many people end up hiding these things because they think it's only them that's experiencing it. And then, as you said, there's a shame involved. So, do you feel that writing about this helped you to alleviate those feelings or just lift them off your shoulders?
Well, yes, because also consider the fact that we want the world to see us successful, don't we? That's what social media is all about.
Yeah, that's true.
So true. I think, it felt so good just because I do have a lovely life now, and I have a great relationship, and my kids are older, and they're doing fine. But it happened. I don't want to pretend it didn't. So I think that writing the story finally put a lot of things to bed for me, put a lot of healing. As much as my intent was to help heal others, it was a lot of healing for me. But I'll tell you, it's the last time I want to tell the story.
That's understandable. Yeah. It's understandable, but often, as you found, telling those stories helps you to heal through what you've experienced.
Yes, I have had quite a number of people come to me afterwards after they read. And by the way, it's a great read. It's not a sad story. I like to write with a bit of humor and a little bit of, passion. But I have had people come to me and say, could we have a conversation? They want to talk to me about things they, quote, never talk about, unquote. And that's the key. I can't express enough that if we just all communicated, there'd be a lot less loneliness in the world.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point, because, to some degree, I see those things mentioned on social media where some people are just going kind of crazy because they feel so isolated from other people, and going through, of course, with COVID and quarantining. And I think a lot of things that people were feeling already in their lives probably became really amplified.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's also, even if they don't, aren't ready to, or still don't want to talk about what's, et cetera. There's a feeling of contentment that they reach as well. I've had that message come through from other people too. They just felt so much better, because it's like a song that you hear in the radio, one of those, sad songs or love songs. If they can sing about something that happened in your life that was devastating to you, well, if somebody can sing about it, then it's a lot more common than you think. And the feeling of, wow, this person gets it, and the other thing is about the book, I don't hold back in telling the truth about myself either. And that's important too. That's all part of it too. But some people can read it and think, oh, I just didn't feel so alone anymore,
Yeah, that's really, really, important. And you also, mentor, young adults.
Yes.
So when you do that, do you also kind of connect with the ways that what you went through when you were their age and how you felt?
Absolutely. I've always been able to communicate very, very well, with the younger generation. And I think it comes from, I don't place judgment. I've been through that enough in my life. I listen, and now, mind you, if they want my opinion, they're going to get it, but that's our rite of passage, right? But I'm very good at listening and actually empathizing with how they see their issues. they're not, 45 or 55 or 65 years old. They're only, let's say 18 or 25 or 32. They haven't lived enough years yet to experience all the things and understand everything. So putting yourself back down to that, remembering that you didn't know all that either. And you sort of let them talk in their language, right? So as soon as they become comfortable enough and they understand that, it's easy to help. I love to. I can share my own stories. I can lead them into, part of my work is to help them find what's still inside them that they've long forgotten. The core values they developed as they were growing up. They're still there. They need to find, whether it's work or play or relationship, things that, come from who they are, inside. And, again, I'll just say that as opposed to following reality shows.
Yeah, that describes them all right.
Right? I mean, I think it's because I can let them talk their language, and I adore them. I adore them. I love to listen to them. I will laugh with them. I will cry with them, but we'll get to the heart of maybe something they should be focusing on, things that they need to pursue or think about or challenge themselves with. I've challenged myself all my whole life, and I've never disappointed myself yet. So it doesn't mean I've won. It means I'm not afraid of trying, and I want the young people to know that.
And, after you've written about what you've experienced and how you feel about it, do you feel that you have to continue to reinforce that for yourself and remind yourself of how far you've come?
I do, because you hit on that earlier about there's a common thread running through the book, and it's about the homes and how important the home was. I often think about that, about how that isn't the center point. I find myself happier these days when I'm not so concerned with things that would have concerned me right up until, just a few years ago, about how, organized it was, or how it looked, or how it appeared, or how they're just things, they're just things. What transpired in the last couple of years is a beautiful relationship I've had now with someone in my life, but also with my family. I think that, not to mention all the disastrous things that went on. And the book, trust me, is full of them. If you need some really good stories, you're going to find quite a few of them in that book. But because of all that, I'm just such a much more relaxed in life person, right? I think, and that again is also a lesson, and that's a lesson for the older people. There's a lot of us that are stuck in cycles and hamster wheels and relationships and jobs and what have you. Sometimes, you just got to sit back and say, not today. It's not worth it to worry about all that little stuff.
That's a great point. I think a lot of people are finding that right now, as you mentioned with COVID and all that changed the way people live. And I keep seeing how so many people feel that they don't want to particularly go back in the office or not go back in the same way that they had been before, because they found another way to live.
Yes. And not only that, but they spent the last year on landscaping and renovations in their home. Trust me, and pools. You can't get a pool right now if you tried. So the homes and gardens are ready. So they can stay home and work. I think that we all need a refresher on how to conduct ourselves in work. This was, if that's one thing I agree with, is that it changed our way of thinking that way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's very interesting. Some of the things I've read, and people are like, well, now I have time with my family, or now my spouse or partner doesn't have that commute and they're not as stressed. So it's very interesting to see the ramifications.
Yeah. And what's really funny? You always had that time. It's how you chose to spend it.
That's
Right?
so true.
I have girlfriends that when they started having kids, say this is way back, and the kids were maybe 10, 12 years old, and this one said, I always thought I'd be at home baking cookies with my kids when I had them. And I looked at her and I said, then why weren't you? Oh, that's right, because you wanted 2 cars and you wanted the this and you wanted that. And so you had to have all those things. And so you worked as well as your husband. It's not because you couldn't. It's because you chose not to. So all the things in my book that I had gone through the same. But one of the things that was always so important to me, because again, it is centered around the home and the family nucleus, which I did not have. We also didn't have that kind of, we weren't the Brady Bunch. Okay. But I took it very seriously. So I had kids a little bit later. I chose that. That was a choice, to have them later, to have the career first, work as hard as they could. Do part-time. Of course, this was people didn't do part-time work at home then, but I did because it was important to me to be, when my kids started going to school, when they got out of school, the gate opened, I was there waiting. Now, don't get me wrong. Everybody's different. That's not a judgment about people who do work. It's just that if that's the life you chose, you have to own up to that.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting, because a lot of times people are just sitting on the hamster wheel and they kind of wonder how they got there, but then they don't see the choices a lot of times that were made that they are at this point. And looks like there's a lot more consideration now from some people as to if they want to continue in that way.
Yes, and that's not against the people who do have, I know women who work 2 jobs to support her kids. I think they're the most powerful people I've ever met. Strength. But again, when you do have your free time, what do you do? Everybody has a pocket of time, whether it's 5 minutes or 5 hours or 5 days. What I myself have realized I just can't waste time on triviality. We'll just say.
Right. Yeah, the things that don't matter.
Yeah, like the Kardashians. I'm sorry. I just provided, I guess, a perfect opportunity to say that. If you're a fan, I'm sorry.
I find I used to watch reality shows a lot more when I hated my job and I was commuting, and then I would come home. I guess I just enjoyed seeing that because I was already in a mood. Yeah. But, since I worked from home, and I was working from home before the COVID, I just am like, well, why do I want to watch that?
You see? But you see, you just said it. You just said it. I watched it when I was unhappy in my job.
Yeah.
There you go. That's the one thing I work with young people on, is getting to a place or position or job or career that actually means something to them and it has value to them. Because that is exactly what happens. That unhappy job life funnels to everything else.
That's true. I could say I definitely experienced that in the commuting and the stress, and it does come out in ways that maybe are not the best for you and people who have to deal with you. So you can get rid of that, the better. So Shari, could you please share where people can find your book and find out more about you?
Yes, all the books are available on Amazon. Quite simply, that's the easiest thing to do. There's a couple, Barnes and Noble, etc., but Barnes and Noble. It's just easy. You can find them on Amazon. This one has done very, very well. I have it in all hardcover, paperback, and audiobook because, it's and it's available globally on Amazon. I have people buying in Australia and in Holland, the Netherlands, and in India. So I'm quite excited. This has no barriers. This has no boundaries. This is a story that is for everybody in any place. But you, like any good book, you will laugh, you will cry, you will cheer. So it's not depressing. But I'm in the midst of reworking my own personal site, but I do have one. It's ShariAnnMoss.com. Yeah, not .ca.com. ShariAnnMoss.com. I'm changing it up. There's a bit of an older profile there of some work I used to do, but I'm really working on my writing. That's what's most important to me, because my writing is teaching people a lot of things just by hearing the stories. I believe in talk. I believe in talking, sharing your stories.
Mm-hmm. And that's important, as you found. That's very important for people so they can see, as you said, that they're not alone. So Shari, this has been a wonderful conversation, and, really talking about things that we can all certainly identify with. So do you have any final thoughts to share?
I think the timing right now, we briefly touched up on COVID. If there was ever a time to really reflect on what's important in your life and what changed, and I think coming out of it, which we all pretty much are, it's just a really good time to take stock, as I did, on what was really important.
That's true. So I think that's great advice for everyone. And Shari, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story with us.
Oh, it was lovely. I really enjoyed talking with you today. So thanks for having me.
Everyone, I know you enjoyed this show. Please share this on social media and check out Shari's book and her website. Those links will be in the show notes. So I hope that you will take a look at that. So once again, Some Women Entrepreneurs Radio with your host, Deborah Bailey. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you again next time. Bye.
Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to stop by womenentrepreneursradio.com to read extended bios of the show guests, and also find links there for their websites and any offers that they have shared with you. And stop by our Facebook page at facebook.com/womenentrepreneurs.